Hey everybody, here we have a replay from Axe Train in his E75, going to show us just what this thing can do against enemies who don't know how to aim. So we're on Murovanka, and Axe Train's actually got a pretty decent spawn. He should be able to get away from the base before too many shots start coming in. If only he can get past the mouse. Now, he actually turns right around to put some distance between himself and the enemy spawn, as well as try and head towards the hill, which is actually a good idea. Obviously, it reduces your chances of getting spotted, especially if the enemy scout doesn't actually leave their base, but just runs a quick loop out the front of it. Most of the team has barely moved at all, in fact. Axe Train's platoon mate runs up the hill in a 54 to get eyes on it and try and deny the enemy the ability to get set into good positions up there. But by himself, he's probably going to run into quite a bit of trouble. He does have a T-57 coming up as well as Axe Train, but they're both lagging quite far behind. The enemy Leopard prototype is actually pushed into a really risky spot. A really stupid spot, in fact. I don't know why you would ever take a Leopard prototype there this early in the game. It's just asking to get shot. And if we look at the minimap, the Waffenträger and M103 appear to be AFK, as does the E3 perhaps, and the mouse and the 50B have barely moved at all. Not the best sign. 54 and 57 are already up, getting shots on and shots by the enemy. As Axe Train moves up as quickly as the E75 possibly can. Again, look at the folds in the terrain. He's screened on his right side by the road, and his front by that slight rise. His platoon mate accidentally rams into him while typing. And the T-57 is making a last stand. There he goes. This leaves Axe Train alone to fight the entire enemy force coming up the hill. His platoon mates run down to go hang out by the mouse. Axe Train, being alone against an indeterminate number of tanks, but probably a lot, loads APCR and begins working the terrain. Now, this is the exact same strategy you saw Dessau using in his 7201, and there's a reason for that. It works. It really, really works in German heavy tanks. The only obstacle to it really is either being flanked from around the bottom of the hill, or having Arty hit you. In this case, the enemy Arty is a 261, which is actually very dangerous here. Despite its flat arc, it's very accurate. And in fact, its flat arc means it's liable to hit Axe Train directly in the side if it takes shots at him. Now, the enemy E100 is a big threat here, so Axe Train goes for shots on that. And starts bouncing the incoming shots. The E100, I want to believe he was aiming at Axe Train's turret face, which he would easily pen if he'd actually hit it. That's where he should be aiming, but it's just as likely that a puppy like him would aim for the upper plate. This is, in fact, the bad E100 on the enemy team. A shot meant there for the T-57, by the looks of it, goes into the E100 again. Certainly not something that I would really complain about. And the Arty starts to get some hits in. Axe Train unfortunately just doesn't have the angle to pen the E100's turret face. He's shooting uphill into the sloped front. It's just too much of a combination. If he was on flat ground, he could probably pen that about 6 times out of 10 maybe. However, he actually has a much better shot here at the E100's belly plate, and the E100 decides to shoot at his upper front. Now, this is not a good idea. The E100 has no chance at all of penning Axe Train's upper front plate, especially at that kind of angle, and especially firing heat. He does finally get a penning shot in by pushing right into Axe Train's face, but it's the last thing he's going to do. With some support from over his shoulder, Axe Train is able to get it done and clean up a lot of the opposition up here. Nice gold, E75 winds the E100, who was shooting heat the whole time and bouncing, which is the more important thing. Of course, there's nothing wrong with shooting heat out of an E100, it's what you should be firing, but to complain about having gold shot at you, particularly when you're as bad as that guy was and just doing dumb things like pushing into the entirety of Axe Train's team, not really any latitude to bitch about gold there. The second enemy E100's found himself in a very bad spot now. Most of his support is either dead or hiding, and he's now 225 hit points cowering behind a wreck for dear life, and the 53-55 solves him. The T-54 gets tracked in a very unlucky spot. Axe Train gets a quick snapshot in, and it gets cleaned up by the mouse. Things are starting to look pretty good, despite the dire beginning of this match. Again, you can see this piece of terrain on the hill here, this little sort of triangle of cover, is an excellent, excellent spot to put a heavy tank to use, as long as it's not being focused by artillery. The enemy really have to push into your gun to be able to get any effective shots on you. And quite often you do have people supporting you from behind, and so to do that is pretty much suicide. Axe Train looks for shots on the enemy IS-4, while keeping in mind that there's still an E5 up here. His team, meanwhile, have pushed across the south into the enemy base and managed to clean up the IS-7. IS-4 gets lit, Axe Train has a shot. Unfortunately, it flies a little high and it looks like it must have bounced off the back right corner of the turret. Just in case of bad angle, the gun easily has enough pen to go through that, especially with APCR. However, it does get the IS-4's attention and it puts a shot into Axe Train. Its shot doesn't bounce. So, once again, he falls back into his little safe area and waits for the IS-4 to get dealt with while pushing on the E5. And I'm sorry about the replay stuttering. It's misbehaving itself a bit. Hopefully I can get it to stop. Axe Train's next shot, his last gold shell, goes straight through the side of the IS-4 for a nice 504 damage. And now he really only has to worry about the E5. The IS-4 takes another shot but misses. The enemy arty is about to be dealt with, or at least you would think, but instead the Waffenträger and M103 decide they want to cap out, so they just sit on the cap circle quite happily, ignoring the arty they could chase after and kill. Now it is a 261, and the 261 is quite fast, but it's not fast enough to get away from what's coming to it. Of course, the two shitters cap out, but Axe Train is at least able to roll out and get one more damaging shot in before the end of the match. Pretty cruisy game, a little tense at the beginning, but again, that piece of terrain there is really the pro play for German heavies on this map. If you can get into that spot and you can avoid being prioritized by artillery and your team stop any attempts to flank you through the village, you are pretty much invincible until the enemy push over the top, at which point they are going to be meeting the guns of everything behind you. And quite often that includes at least 1 or 2 big tank destroyers, who are usually sitting around A5, A6. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.